Good afternoon, everybody. Make sure that everything is kicking off. We've got people online. My webinar hasn't spazzed out today, which is nice. Evening, Andy. How are you? I always like getting the chat notifications and things like that. It makes it much easier. You never know if you're talking to a wall with these things, especially when everything's all quiet. And given all the good luck and bad luck I've had with webinars, it's good to get a little bit of interaction. Delray Beach, Jerry, where is Delray in relation to Fort Lauderdale? Where is that? I ask because I'm actually in sunny Fort Lauderdale. I've drawn the curtains, otherwise the light is very, very bright, and it kind of washes the whole chat out. Barry, great to see you again. I just saw you found a deal on colorful fedoras. That's wonderful. Yeah, I'm spending most of my time, Andy, in Chicago, where it's not icy yet, but it's certainly cold. It's that kind of bitter cold that cuts right through you. But I want to dive in. We've got some questions, and if you've got questions for the webinar, right below you have the ability to ask a question. And the really great thing about this is when you watch the replay, you can jump directly to the answers to individual questions as they're asked. I'm going to just start right over here at the bottom. Now, Andy, just looking at your thing, that is wonderful to hear. So the question here, if you don't have it, so far I found Mago amazing and the surface is barely scratched. Feel organized, more confident taking bookings. Glad everything's been going so well. So the question is this: I'm feeling unsure and unconfident about the automation side of things. I can see how this has potential to be amazing in terms of keeping relationships fresh and staying in the mind of previous bookers. Even promotion on a public show. Can't find your way in terms of what to write, to who, how to begin sending it up, etc. Well, let's do that. Let's just start at the beginning here, talking about setting up automation for a couple different scenarios. Andy, I see you're on the chat. Is there any particular scenario that you want to cover, either a part of the sales process, part of the booking process, just kind of staying in the mind of bookers? Is there anything that you want to cover, or should I just kind of pick a scenario at random? And while you're doing that, I'm going to switch over to Mago. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. I might zoom this in just a little bit. I'm going to put it in well, it might be too large. We'll go there. That way you've got kind of everything. And then I can zoom in as well. Sales and after sales. That's what we're talking about. So this is where we're diving into this, mainly sales and then after sales. So initial inquiry through to after sales, hang in touch, everything really. Andy, you mainly do weddings and corporate close-up. Perfect. Let's just let's look right into that. Let's assume that we have absolutely nothing in here. All of this is accessible under the automation routine here, or the automation menu on the main navigation. I'm going to collapse that to give us just a little bit more room. And let's create we'll just do a corporate close-up. Now, when we're creating a new routine, as Mago exists today in the twilight of 2016, automation is broken into two categories. We have leads and we have gigs. And there's a very important distinction there, why we have these two different categories, because really all automations can be all automations. But something happens in the sales process that doesn't normally happen in the booking process. And that is, we want to schedule our follow-ups, but we don't want to follow up if the client has already booked us. And so just as a measure built in, one of the features built into Mago if a client books an event and you're running a lead automation, when they book, all those follow-ups get automatically stopped. And this is one of those things that as soon as you understand it, it becomes hugely beneficial, hugely valuable. But until then, it might be a cause of confusion. Maybe you find yourself in a situation where your routines have just suddenly stopped and you're not sure why. It's because of this auto stop feature built into the sales process. I see a question there on the chat, so I'm just going to stop here for a minute and go back a step. Under lead automation, and I don't know why this doesn't make my cursor visible, but it doesn't. So right here on the top right corner, right below booked income and total pipeline, there is a little plus symbol, and clicking that actually brings up that new routine window. But jumping back into the process here, so we have corporate close-up sales process, and because it's the sales process, I'm saying the automation target is leads, and essentially when it changes, when a lead changes into a gig, all these follow-ups stop. That way you can confidently queue up emails that say, hey, do you still want to do this event? Or an email that goes out next year that says, hey, we weren't able to work together, but maybe this year we could put something together. Let me know if you have something in mind. And those emails will not go out if they book the event. Let's see. I'm going to say, got one question here. So we give that a name, we give that an automation target. Now, one of the things you can do, and I talk about this a little bit, but this is just one of those nice little features that if you don't know about it, then you're not able to use it, and it's one of those things you might be looking for at some point. If you have different properties, like Andy, you said you book Close-Up Magic, you book Wedding Magic. You know, I do the same thing. Although I have a wildly outdated wedding site. I don't even think I think it hasn't been updated in some years. But for my wedding bookings, I'll actually use theweddingmagician.com as my email address, and for my close-up bookings, I'll use my kind of corporate trulymagic.com. So I have different properties. Other people have different properties for birthdays and different types of shows they offer. And I'm a huge proponent of specializing and having dedicated properties to different, marketing materials, everything for different markets you serve. But so I'm going to use whatever email I want. Actually, my booking email, my main email is michael@trulymagic.com, and we might give this a description. This is. So this might be a booking, just a book, close-up, hourly, local, corporate, strolling magic. So I've created that routine, and we have all the information here. And because I have this zoomed in, so it's easier to see. These windows are stacked one on top of the other. If we zoomed out, if you looked at this normally, you might see them side by side. But yeah, there we go. We'll stack those up for now. And we have all the different action steps. And so really it's just a process of letting this system grow with you. Maybe the first time you send an email out, the very first lead you get into Mago, because you've got your form up on your website, and now you're taking that huge step forward that all your leads are coming into Mago. Maybe day one you don't run any automation. You just use the compose email feature and schedule emails that way. There's certainly a lot of value that you can get right out of the gate, but that's not something you want to do forever. In fact, you want to use how you interact with Mago manually to to guide you into building these automation routines. So maybe one of the first things you do when you get a lead is you enter in your price information. Well, exactly. That's why before you do anything, Andy, walk through this a couple times manually, just with the templates, and you're not even gonna jump really, really deep into the automation yet. And I'll show you why. I'll show you there's some other safety tools that are built in there to make sure that everything is happening as you expect it to. So what I would do in here for my very first email, I'm going to click the little plus icon. Just like before, I'm looking at the routine action steps panel, and to the right of that is the plus icon. So when I click that plus icon, I'm able to add a step. So going into here, one of the first things that you might want to do is send an email. Actually, before you do that, typically one of the first things we do when we're booking an event, when we're quoting an event, is we actually enter the quote information. Now, I created this routine as a local hourly close-up strolling gig. So one of the things that I might do, in fact, this is exactly how my own personal strolling quoting routine works, is I use this action update record. And this allows me to do data entry, repetitive data entry automatically. So one of the things I always do is enter the quote information. And there's a whole video in the knowledge base talking about how the quoting system and the online booking stuff works. But the main crux of it is you enter information into quote 1, quote 2, quote 3. They're all optional. You can have 1 and 2. You can have just 1. Although if you're doing that, you might as well put everything into the fee and just send it out as this is the price. But there's a lot of value in giving people the option to choose. I found very much if you come back with somebody with a price and say, this is my fee, they're going to say, okay, yes or no. It becomes a yes or no question. The choice becomes, do I want this performer or that performer? And psychologically, from a sales aspect, when you say, here are 3 different options, in the mind of the customer becomes not which performer should I choose, but which option should I choose? You're kind of presenting them with a new set of options. The other really wonderful thing is we, in general, have a tendency to sell ourselves short. We see this gig, we want to get this gig. Sometimes we're worried about not getting the gig, so we kind of instinctively come up with the lowest possible quote that we can give them, and then we feel bad when they say, that's it? That's amazing, let's do it. And we're like, oh no, we should have quoted more money. It's not a nice feeling to feel like you left money on the table, and it also doesn't reflect well on you if you're always trying to go for the absolute bottom dollar. Some people have much higher budgets, and they want to spend that. So if you've got multiple options, present multiple options. This way, if they have the big budget, you've got the big budget option in there, and they can book that. If they don't have a big budget, you have your moderate or your economy option, and they can book one of those. And you've got a much wider range to target, and you don't have to worry about overshooting or undershooting. There's a lot of good reasons to do this, but in a nutshell, the quotes exist in the fields quote 1, quote 2, and quote 3, and the descriptions for these quote options are description 1, description 2, and description 3, respectively. So let's assume that I do strolling magic, and I quote. I'm in the United States, and so I quote. Pick a number, $4.50 an hour. So we'll do 3 hours at $13.50. And we'll do this immediately and save this step. And now I've entered my quote 1. Now that's not enough, so I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to add the rest of the information. So I'm going to look for description 1. So we're going to call this close-up interactive strolling magic 3 hours. And we're going to run that immediately as well. So we save that out, and let's enter a second quote, because realistically that might be too high. So we go in here and update record. I'm getting ahead of myself. Click next, and I say quote 2. I'm going to set this at 900. Run that immediately. And update record, I'm going to set my description to close-up, interactive, strolling magic, 2 hours. And we'll go back in here. We're going to add one more update record, and we're going to say quote 3, and we're going to call it 450. And give a description there as well. We're just putting these pieces together. I'm just taking a brief break here to look at the chat. Jerry says, wouldn't a first letter of connection be more productive if you ask first for more information about the gig and then quote appropriately before giving the potential client the ability to go for the lowball quote? Oh, absolutely, absolutely. This is kind of a high level, more in this case, more focused on how you might set up this automation than a lot of business practices. But no, that's one of the things that I like doing as a first point of contact with things now. If you've been working with me, you've probably gotten a Calendly invite. Calendly is a scheduling tool where you can kind of schedule time for a quick consultation. And so I like to give people the option to to go through a to schedule a time to talk about the event in more detail. And it really depends. It also depends on what types of shows you're booking. There are some shows that are that are fairly commodity that you might be trying to do in a higher volume that doesn't make sense to put that much process into. It depends if you're doing birthday shows, for example. I know a lot of people using Mago now have put their birthday shows on almost complete autopilot, just because the value of the show and the kind of market expectations are such that really, look, here are my birthday packages. Which one would you like? For higher end shows, certainly I do a lot higher touch process. I'm a big fan of Barry Friedman's Showbiz Blueprint, which has a little more process. But in general, just kind of automating some of these things, you get some value there. And Andy, you're saying in the case of the wedding, you've already spoken at a wedding fair in their home. Okay, and you would take this kind of idea and you would customize this out. So maybe you've already spoken with them for a wedding or at some kind of event. You've already interacted with these people. Essentially, what you can do here is, well, you've got a lot of options. I'll walk through this as a basic, and we'll talk about different ways to build variations on this. So as a basic thing, if you just want to click a button and send out a quote, your first step is already done. You've entered in all your quote information, so that's going to auto-populate before anything else happens. The way this update record thing happens, it runs it runs before any of the other actions process. So this will always enter your data for you. I was talking to somebody who wasn't aware of this particular feature, and they were almost to a breaking point by typing all these things over and over again by hand, because with the busy holiday season, they're quoting so many things, and that was the one of the things that was causing great stress. But yeah, this is baked right into the system. So we've got our quote information in. Now we might send an email, a sales letter. So we have all these different actions. A couple of these are are grayed out, and one of the reasons for this, because this is a lead automation routine, if you put a step in your lead automation to cancel all the lead automation, it's going to cancel all your lead automation. And so that's the kind of thing that you would put in a booking gig. Likewise, if you want to convert it to a gig, the act of converting a lead into a gig cancels the lead automation. So if you put that and several other steps in the lead side of things, then there's potential for confusion there, which is why those two options are grayed out. But let's just kind of go through this for a little further as a basic thing. We're going to send an email. And for me, we actually do provide some sales templates, especially for strolling magic that you can use as a basic, or if you if you have the wording that you like to use, copy that from whatever you have. In fact, I'll do that right now. I'm going to go and find a if I was doing what you were doing, I would search in my email and find an email that I've sent in the past that has most of the right copy. Because even though I customize a lot of things, the truth is there's a core of my sales content that I had professionally written by a copywriter, and I'd like to keep using. So I'll copy this one here. This is an email that went out earlier this month. And maybe apply a little bit of formatting. So here we've got a date. I'm actually going to kind of just following old school letter writing standards that I learned in school. Insert under the computed formatted fields, we have all the things that kind of get calculated, including the current date. So I'm going to put current date in there, and now we have other current date, and I've got somebody's name. So I want to replace that with another merge field, so I don't have to go and edit this again. Because a lot of times I truly see performers do this all the time. They're copying and pasting emails constantly. And I used to do that. And the reason I would rather build software that does this for me than continue to copy and paste is because I've seen how error prone it is. The number of times I've left one field, like I'll go in there and maybe change the name, but I leave the date, or I change the date, but I miss the company name somewhere else. So here in the contact fields, I'm going to take first name, and here's the date. November 12th is still available. I want that to be gig show date, and I want that to be bold as well. A quote from Ask Client. I'll put that in there with its own little block quote. I'll clean this up. I'll tweak this just a little bit and make sure that I've got all of that. The online booking link. That is here as well. And there are actually two. There are actually a couple online booking links depending on how you're doing this. You've got a select show option link, which takes them to in a two-step process. Step one, they pick an option. Step two, they actually have the ability to leave a deposit if they want. And there's another option. If you're doing your whole bookings on autopilot, then certainly you want to interject yourself into the process once they've chosen a date and a time, because that date or time might not be available. So you want to, before you start taking money from people, you want to make sure that that you actually have this booked. So there's a select show option that just thanks them for their time, but you can't really go any further but I'm going to do this select show option link, because if I'm quoting this event, then it's probably available. So I have this in here, and Again, I have a date, one more date in here. So I'm just reading through, taking this existing email that serves my needs, and I'm everywhere I've got anything specific to the event, I'm just replacing it with a merge field. A merge field is basically a placeholder that will get replaced with whatever whatever data is in your database, whatever's in Mago. So I've got current date, first name, show date. I've got show date again, and the online booking link are the 5 merge fields I have in here. Andy, you asked a question about graphics, and whether putting that in there will flag as spam. Not really. I'll tell you. You know, my background as a software engineer, I worked for a very long time for a company that sent around a little over 1 million emails a day, 1 million emails, text message, things like that. And what these emails were stock price alerts. These are emails that were going out to day traders. These are emails that are going out these are notifications, very, very complicated, timely notifications that essentially, a very simplistic example will tell me when the price of Apple stock goes above, $200. And as soon as it goes above $200, they want to get that email or text message or whatever telling them that's happened so they can do whatever they need to do about that. And some people set up very vast portfolios of these alerts. But because this is very, very time critical, time sensitive stuff, we had to be very good about actually getting into people's inboxes. This was information that was time critical, that absolutely had to be in their inbox within. I think our requirement was to get it in within 90 seconds. I think, and as a result of that, it required me and everybody on my team to learn a great deal about how spam filters work and things like that. So I can tell you this email right here, as it's formatted, uses HTML. HTML is a markup language for the internet. That's how you can say this field, this text here is bold, this text here is bold and centered. The alternative is just plain text where you can't use different fonts or anything else like that. That in and of itself is not a bad thing. It counts very, very, it puts a very, very light black mark on your email. The usual way spam works is it's scored. It's a number of different factors, and it just looks at different things. Some things are more spammy than others. So as a result, every single little detail of your email is getting analyzed and adding to this spam score. When it crosses a certain threshold, and it's different for almost everybody, then it starts getting marked as spam. Having images in your email, there's nothing wrong with that. Using HTML, there's nothing wrong with that. Where it becomes a problem is where you have emails that are heavy on images and light on text. And you'll notice if you look at these promotional emails, a lot of times there's just one big graphic and maybe a paragraph of text. And that's something that starts to look pretty spammy. So if you've got a bunch of big images and no text, that might affect your deliverability. But something like this, if I go in here and click the Insert Edit Image button right now and pick a letterhead image and throw that in there, that's not a big deal. That's going to be just fine. Where this also might affect your deliverability, make sure that whatever images you're using, you're saving for the web, that they aren't that big. This, if I just jump into the file manager, you can see this is not a, I'll just get the info here. Oh, maybe I want that. Yeah, this is 21 kilobytes, so it's not very big. Sometimes what performers will do, if they're not, especially if they're not tech savvy, there are different ways to save images in different qualities. Images that you would use for print are very different to images you'd look at on the screen. So they would upload a very, very super high res image or logo that is massive, might be 10, 12, 20 megabytes, and that is something that's going to start causing emails to bounce. A lot of different email services have limits. Some are 10 megabytes, some are 1 megabyte, some of them are 20 megabytes, but that's still kind of the going rate. But one little trick that you can use, if you do have really big files that you want to, if you want to embed, then you can actually come in here and under Manage, I think, no, maybe you right click. Oh, no, it is Manage. It is, if you go to Info, you can copy the URL. If you've got a really big file in your cloud storage in Mago, you can copy that URL and put that in your email template. You can just put that wherever you want. And if you have a big high-res for print thing, you can take some text, highlight it, and go to the link and put that URL in there. And now you've got a download link, and that's coming from the cloud file storage. And the way that works is actually kind of cool. There's these files actually exist in 3 different zones around the world. So wherever somebody is, they get the access to the closest copy. And it's all, anyway, I won't bore you with the details, but that's an option there if you can do that. For an image to embed in an email, Andy, 750K is probably a little large. You'd want to open that up with, I don't know, if you're on a Mac, open it with Preview. If you're on Windows, you can open it with whatever I know they've changed recently, but you want to change the resolution for web graphics probably to 72 dpi instead of 300 or 600 for images for print. So 750K is a little on the large side. That it'll be okay, but it'll take longer for your files to load, and it might, big images again, it's just going to increase your the odds that you're going to get caught in a in some kind of quarantine. So and Gary asked a question: is there a key to know exactly what the fields are? So under the help menu here, let me get out of this. I think this is. Let me just finish this process up. So I'm going to call this my close-up sales template. Let me see. Is this actually a close-up? I would probably change this wording. This is a quote for a stage show. I'd say something like attached is a quote, a detailed quote. What you can expect from a close-up magic performance. Something like that. So I attach a PDF that has, I use the document feature to attach a PDF as well. It just gives everything a very professional look. But there's nothing wrong with putting that in the email. And again, you can do that from all the quote information that you just populated are under gigs, under description 1, 2, and 3, and we have our quote 1, 2, and 3 right here. So let me save this. I'm going to call this close-up magician for. If this is corporate, I might do something like this. I might say company name. And again, all these here, I've been doing this long enough that I actually know what all these are off the top of my head. But if this is your first foray into Mago, by selecting that field, actually, let me do that. I'll just do that right here. Company name. That's gonna just drop that there. So I'll just cut that up there and paste that up there, because all the merge fields work in the subject as well as in the body. So if you've got so you can kind of personalize these headlines. I also like to do this because one of the things I did, Andy, when I was in your shoes, and I was still getting comfortable with all this automation, even though I built it, I had it send me a copy of every email that went out. And that quickly becomes problematic because I might be testing this, just making sure I set everything up right. And then I send real ones out, and I get all these emails, and they all have the subject "re-magician" or something like that. So I might say, so I might put the company name on there, or I might put the event that they're on there. So close-up magician on, and I can just take that right from here and put that in there. So now I've got the date. Re-close-up magician on November 12th, or whatever the date is. So I put that in there. I save this, and now I've got my email template. It's just been created. If you want to, I like to attach a PDF. I hired a designer, same person who did my website, to go and build a PDF in the styling that took some of the copy that I had a copywriter write for me, and present that quite nicely. So I attached that. I have that set up as a document template. It's not here under this test account, but if you do that, then that's an option. And I mentioned that I had these emails being sent either to me and the contact. So in here under the send to, you've got these options. You can send an email to the primary contact. You can send an email to the performer. You can send an email to both you and the contact. And then this new option that I don't think a lot of people know about is you can actually send an email to another person. This is useful if you're setting up some kind of subcontracting type agreement where you're forwarding leads on to somebody that you always work with, or if you have a VA and you want to send them some information. You can actually say, instead of sending this to the contact, I could send this to VA at trulymagic.com. And that whatever the content is there, that's the option. But certainly with this email, we want this to go to the primary contact. So I click next. I set my scheduling. This is a sales letter. I want this to go out immediately, so I don't make any changes in here. And once I'm ready to save, I just close that out. Now, this, by the way, this is just the beginning, because where you really get the power, doing something like this isn't that difficult per se, and a lot of people quite happily will copy and paste and update emails all the time. Where you really start to get the benefit, and where Mago can absolutely double your closing rate, is with the follow-ups. This is if you were to invest 5 minutes into Mago, this is going to pay for it many, many, many times over. Adding in the automatic follow-ups. I mean, I can't stress enough how powerful this was. I think I talked about this a little bit on the webinar with Barry, but absolutely, when I was doing birthday parties, I spent the first year I did birthday parties, I spent $18,000 in 1 year on AdWords. The second year, I spent $1,200, and the third year I was spending nothing. But all 3 years, I booked in excess of $50,000 worth of birthday parties. And the reason I was able to go from $18,000 a year in AdWords to nothing was by just using this system to follow up and rebook events rebook events with happy clients, rebook events where people didn't book me, and basically the value of every lead that came in was dramatically increased, because maybe I didn't get them the first year, but I got them the second year, the third year, or maybe they booked me once and then I was able to come back again in 2 years. And that was probably the biggest thing biggest change that I made to my business. It'll take you 5 minutes, and it will absolutely, this one thing will make the entire investment worthwhile. Send an email, and we already have some examples in here, so we can pick one out. follow-up. I think they're all in here. If I start search for follow-up or generic one-day follow-up, and the samples that we have here, they're marked generic because you could really use this for a corporate event, for a wedding. There's no show-specific language. Like in the examples, I'm a magician, and so I had a stock of templates for magicians, but really these are just ideas. These are just examples. But in the examples here, there's a generic, and there are kids follow-ups as well. So we have our follow-up. I'll just look for that. Our one-day follow-up. I'm going to send that to the primary contact. I'm going to do that one day later. Now, if you don't have one, or if you have one that you already want and you don't want to go in and start finding and editing templates, that's absolutely fine. Just, again, click the plus, and we're going to call this close-up one-day follow-up. And we'll call this just following up. And, in fact, I'm going to do what you would do. I'm going to go to my email and just pick one here that I've sent out. Unfortunately, I don't have very much. To be honest, I haven't sent many quotes or follow-ups out this year. When I made the decision in January to build Mago and get rid of Showbiz CRM, it pretty much required me to. I decided to double down on this, so I did no active marketing at all. I had a one contract, kind of traveling and speaking and performing. So I've just been kind of coasting on that, which is probably going to work out really well, because when everything gets really busy in the coming weeks, I'm going to be. This is the first time in 12 years that I haven't worked the second Saturday in December. In fact, right now, in the entire month of December, I have exactly 2 holiday parties booked. But so it's going to take me just a minute to find one of my follow-ups. Let's see, just following up. All right, this kind of works. This is actually in a reply from somebody else, so the formatting might be a little messed up. Yeah, but we'll go with that. Let's download the image. So I'll put that. I'm going to upload an image here. That was strange. Yeah, my image might be corrupted because I just tried to pull it out of the email. But this is my follow-up. I have a little email like this. I put an image in there. I think actually, well, it doesn't matter. Contact, first name. I put a little link to a YouTube video in there. And this would be my typical kind of 1 day follow-up. Normally from my sales process, I'll do this 1 day after the routine is run, save that. So now immediately I update the record, I send an email to the contact. After 1 day, I'm going to send an email, my 1 day follow-up. I might go in here, add a 7 day follow-up, and again, there's a couple examples in there. So I'll just breeze through this. I think you're starting to get the idea, so I'm not gonna bore you with the details. In this case, I'm gonna pick a standard 7 day follow-up in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Save that. And now after 7 days, we have that. After you know, the main thing though, where you really start getting the value is like a 10-month follow-up when they did not book. This is an email that says, hey, we spoke about this time last year. It didn't work out. How about we do it this year? And the number of times, it's probably, as a, you know, from a sales perspective, it's one of the best feelings to get a reply from an email that I never sent that says, yeah, that sounds wonderful. Let's do it. I actually, this is the only reason I did any shows this year, because other than the things that I'm already kind of committed to do, was because these emails would go out and people would say, yeah, that sounds great, let's do it again, or yeah, that sounds great, let's do it this year. So, you know, you put that in there. It's got to depend on your market. So you might do 320, you might do 330, 340. I mean, it really depends on how far out people book. You could even go, if it's a birthday party, for example, people tend to book last minute. So they tend to be looking for, in my experience at least, and your mileage, your market may vary, but in my experience, people booking birthday parties are saying, hey, are you available this Saturday, right? Because busy parents, they've been putting it off, and now they can't put it off anymore, which is where putting this whole process onto autopilot becomes amazing, because they if they can click a button, have the quote, and book right there without having to get on the phone, without having to do any additional steps, that is probably more responsible than for my high closing rate than anything else. So I would go a little further back on the for the birthday. I'd maybe give them 2 weeks, or I might have a couple emails. So one a month before the birthday, one 2 weeks before the birthday, and one on the birthday, just saying, hey, happy birthday to, you know, whoever. Corporate, I mean, you never know. So you've got some control over here, but I'm just going to say 330. This is 1 month before you ran the routine last time, approximately 335, I guess. So I save that, and now I've got another follow-up. And there's other things you can do in here. This is a really simplistic example. All you're really doing is filling out the quote and sending a few emails. You can schedule calls. You can create to-do items. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but just kind of covering this from this really simplistic example. Clinton has a question. Is there a way to send an automated email in 6 months, for example, but not have it go out without a last minute or day of approval step? You know, tell me what you would tell me what you'd like that to look like and what your concerns are, because certainly I found a lot of performers don't necessarily log in every day, especially if they're able to kind of do things off their phone. It would create a situation where if the system is waiting for somebody to say, okay, send this email, then it might get delayed, and then the date passes, and somebody becomes, you know, mad at me, for example. They say, hey, I never sent this email, and well, it was waiting for you. So I'm you know, what you're describing isn't a reasonable thing to request as a feature, but I'd want to get a little more information from you, from what you'd like to what you'd like that to look like, because you know, different things in the past, in Showbiz CRM, for example, we had a feature where all the emails, there was one panel on the dashboard that just listed all the emails that were going to get sent out ever, and you could actually, you had a list of everything that was going to get sent out. This kind of layout, if we put, for example, there's one user who has, last I looked, 900 odd emails that are scheduled to go out over the next 4 years. If we tried putting all that on the dashboard would take forever to load, and it would be useless. I mean, you really can't see what's going out 6 months in advance. But maybe, okay. But maybe the showing emails that are going out that week or over the next couple of days, kind of the way the to-do list shows the only the kind of current and overdue things. Maybe a panel on the dashboard might do that. But the other thing is, a lot of times, to be honest, if I'm communicating with a contact, if I'm just going to jump off the screen here for a second, and let's just go over to the dashboard. My process, if I'm communicating with a contact about anything, one of the things that I'm doing, I'm going to zoom out of this a little bit. One of the things that I'm doing is, like, if I talk to this person, one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to log the call. So if I call them or they call me, I'm gonna put notes in here. So I've got this. Okay, yeah, we talked today at 3 o'clock, just about anything, whatever. Then I'm putting these I'm putting these notes in here anyway. So as I'm already in here, I see whatever scheduled actions are scheduled for this contact. So certainly, I could easily go and either edit or remove an email. In fact, let me queue up some emails. We'll put that in there. So when I click Run Routine, this is going to go off. It's going to do all the processing and show and update everything on the page. So we'll see what's queued up here now. So I can see here are my emails that are queued to send out today at 4:23, tomorrow at 3:53, and then on 10:30:17. So I've got these. If I'm in there and I'm having a conversation, either if I'm emailing somebody, I'm on the screen. If I'm calling somebody, I'm on the screen, because this is my sales CRM. This is what I'm using. Oh yeah, because I'm in here anyway. I mean, occasionally I'm on the road and I might send an email to that archive address, but but certainly I'm kind of in here. I'm in here daily. So if I have something in here, maybe if I compose this and I've got the 30-minute delay on, I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But if the client called me right after they sent it in, and I've already generated all this, well, certainly I'm going to go and click on the edit icon right here and I'm going to zoom back in so again you can see. I'm going to click on the edit icon right here to make some quick changes to my email. So this is the email template that we just created, and it was great speaking with you on the phone. This sounds like it would be a really fun event. So I might tweak this email, make a few changes here and there, and I might change the schedule. And when I make that edit there, that changes it for the that will change it for that email, that specific email, but it won't update the template. But yeah, certainly, Clinton, that's what I've been doing for 5 years, and haven't run into an issue. That's not to say there's not a better way to do it, but my main concern really is that if things are going up and prompting you to do something, then it's not. Then at that point, it's not really automated. We might as well just create to-do items, and then you could use the to-do list. But I feel like if we did that, it would pull a lot of the power away from the system. The other option, actually, one of the things that I used to do when I would send out thank you emails is I would actually send them to me, and it had so I would create an email template. So if you've got something that you want to tweak a very certain way, I would actually create a new email template. We'll just pick this as an example. We'll call this template customize, and thank you. Thank you, contact first name, and I had my whole thank you email in here, but this wouldn't go to the client because these would get sent off, the day after, and I always wanted to personalize them, and this was something. So instead of having a very form lettery, thank you very much, really enjoyed your show, hope you had as much fun as I did, all the best. I would actually. There was this, one of the things I did with these birthdays. There was a moment in my show where we would take a selfie with. I would take a selfie with the birthday kid in this really big moment, and it was kind of a joke, but I did take that selfie and I would put that in the thank you email. And so in here, I would insert the contact email address. Yeah, contact email right here. And then I would add, and then I would enter in my whole thank you email template that would go all the way through this process, except instead of sending it directly to the client, I would send it to me. And I would get that with my little instructions, edit and send to contact email 1. So this was something I did a long time because I wanted to make sure that email never went out with the placeholders in there. I've since changed that. I actually write all my emails now. I still like to customize them a lot, but I write all my emails in such a way that if they send out without the personalization, it still looks good. And so, I've always felt like the weakest link in my business is me. So if I can build redundancy around that, then great. And then that way, if I customize it, they're happy. If I don't customize it, they're happy. But yeah, and then Bo just asked to make sure you understand when you change the email in the automation in the individual contact, that email alone is changed without disturbing the general template for future automation. Yes, absolutely. And also, I'll just say this. I think we covered that. So the two options are either using the CRM and being in it, and you see those things in the scheduled items. Or email it to you if you're really worried about, if you have something that you're really worried about, email it to you. But the other option, just before I go off of that too much, the other option to remember is that if I have a lead and I have all these things, in fact, I'll just jump back to the dashboard. If I have a lead and I run this routine, so I click automate and I run my corporate sales process, which is going to do all these things. It's going to send out emails that look exactly like this. Then if I run that, then all of that is there. But as soon as I go in and click on the, as soon as I convert this to a lead, in fact, I'll just pop this open in a new tab so we can see. I'll scroll all the way down here. Here's all the emails that are in there, all these follow-ups, just following up. Did you have any questions? Here's me checking in a year later in October 2017. If we book the gig, or they pick, or even if they just pick a package, if I go in here and convert this to a gig, this is telling me any active lead automation routines will be stopped when you convert this record to a gig. There are 4 actions that will be canceled. So I click OK. and all those follow-ups are gone. They're not going to. So that's another kind of safety built into the thing. But the other thing I wanted to talk about, just very quickly to speak to Bo's question, also if you make a change to a template, if I go in here, I mean, I've just all those emails just got wiped out. But if I go in here and make a change to the email template, if we go back to our the one we just created, let's see, close up sales template. If I go in here and make some kind of change, maybe I get rid of the header, who knows? If I make some kind of change, then this is not going to affect emails that have already been generated. So when you run a routine, the emails are generated and they're all kind of, staged to be sent. But so if you change the template, that's not going to affect anything that's in queue to be sent either. One other thing that I think is just worth mentioning while we're talking about potential interactions between things. If I run a routine, if I run a routine that like that one we just created, and then at some point I have this idea to go back in there and into my close-up corporate sales process, and I want to add one more step to maybe send one more follow-up email. Maybe we create a 2-week follow-up email, right? And I add this in here. This will not change anything that is already run, because can you imagine the chaos if, let's say, you've been using this this close-up quote routine for 2 years, you've quoted 150 shows, and then you add one more step that is set to go out 14 days after the routine is run, which would be all of those 150 ones, because all of those dates have pretty much passed now at this point. And it sends everybody an email that says, "Hey, just want to give you one last call before I take your date off my calendar." That would be a disaster. So if you change a automation routine, it's not going to affect anything that's already running. Really, really important detail. So I'm going to, but that's kind of the basic process from the booking side of things. From the sales side of things, the process, there's a very good video that in the knowledge base that goes over the online booking process and things like that. But on the booking side of things, here, give me 1 second. Suppose it would help if I plug in my laptop. On the sales side of things, if you, certainly I send a confirmation. I send a pre-show check-in. I send a post-show thank you. I like to send a request for a quote, request for a testimonial, things like that. All of these, I might send one more email. Barry Friedman has a very detailed booking funnel where he has a lot of different steps in there where sends out the confirmation, sends out these emails that just kind of say, "Hey, I was thinking about your show, had a great idea. And you probably didn't need to know this, but really working hard on making this a great event." But at a minimum, you want to send out a confirmation, you want to send a pre-show check-in, you want to send a post-show thank you. If you've read the Dave D books way back in the day, a lot of the principles there still hold a lot of weight. If you're, asking for referrals, asking for a testimonial, asking, some of these things that people are more than happy to do. I know a lot of people who read Dave D's books back in the day, and just it was too much work to go and say, "Hey, would you do me a favor and send pass my details on to somebody you know. I forget the specifics now. It's been a long time since I read the book, but you can just bake that into your process, and people are happy to refer you. If you go and do a good show, people want to see you successful, and they want to help. And again, you've got that whole process now on autopilot. Take a look at some of the routines that are there. We created several sample routines that you can use. All the templates are yours to use. All of the routines are there to serve as examples, but certainly you can use those. And let me see. But Andy, I just want to check in. Does that help? Does that give you a little bit more insight into the process there? And as I go down, I'm going to end answering this. Now we've got one more thing I'll add on this in terms of the confidence is, know that signing a contract, selecting a package, or converting a lead into a gig is going to stop all those sales follow-ups automatically without any interaction on your part. That is that's like the free and bingo. So if you've categorized your automation correctly, then a lot of those worries start to go away. Also, you can bake that into your process. So if we go in here and create a gig automation, and we just give it some kind of new process, whatever that is, you also have the ability as an action that you can put into a gig automation is this feature to cancel all your lead automation. So that's there as well. The other thing, the other really key thing is at any point in the automation process, we'll just go back and we'll walk through this a little bit. If we pick this demo event, the date's already passed, and we run an automation routine, click automate. The first thing, if we're going to run something, I have a bunch of these in there. I'm not even sure what they all do. We have the preview tool. The preview, okay, now it tells me here are the actions and the sequence of the actions. But I want to see the actual email that's going to go out. So I can click on one of these templates, and I get the exact email. This isn't showing me the template anymore. This is showing me the actual merged final email that's going to go into the queue. So I can see exactly what this looks like here. And this is outside of the editor. This is outside of everything. So I see exactly the content. I see exactly what's going to go out. If it's not quite what I want, if I need to change the template, right from here, I can go in and pop open the template editor and edit that template. Most of the time, I don't need to, or I certainly don't need to edit the template. I might make just a change here. So I have this whole process here, so I can see exactly what's happening, exactly the exact wording, all these things. And when I run this, everything now is going to be in that scheduled actions window. So in addition to everything else, I have, I can see this exact schedule. Now it is 4:09 by my clock, 4:10. And you can see this is going out on a slight delay. Oh, we've actually run this twice because I keep doing this as we go through. As we go through, everything is running on a delay. So if by default, when you sign up a new account, I can look at this and say, oh, you know what? I want to remove these actions. I want to remove these actions. Yeah, it was 4:09 local time here. I'm on the East Coast right now. So at 4:39, this email is going to go out. So there's a 30-minute delay. So I can actually go in here and look at this and make whatever changes I want. Now I could maybe as I'm just getting confident with the system, I leave this on for everything. Every time I run a routine, I have my 30-minute delay on. And I look at it and I review it, and yep, everything merged in. This is saying everything I wanted to say. I can go test this link out, make sure that all that works okay. I can test this link, I can test this link, because you're not really, you don't have to just put 100% faith into this. This is not a, this is not that kind of not that kind of thing. So if I'm happy with it, now I just click now right here, and which will change the send date time to it's 11 minutes after the hour, so it changes to 11 minutes after 4, and I click Save Changes, and now this is going out in the next minute or so. If not, I can at any point I can say, you know what, this is not what I wanted. I can stop everything, or I can delete individual actions, whatever I want to do. But you've got a lot more. You've got a lot of control over what's going out, and there's a lot of opportunities to preview things, to keep that visible. And I really like that idea. I need to figure out a way to put that schedule on the dashboard in a way that is fitting with the Mago look and feel. The Showbiz CRM was very, very difficult to use. And there weren't any of these kind of UI niceties that Mago has, and so that feature was just kind of thrown in there, and I'm sure it had value. I didn't personally use it because I was usually in records. I saw these things anyway, but it would just take some communication with like folks like yourselves to really get an idea of how you want to use that. And then the user experience can be designed to optimize that. So, but there's a lot of options right now. But certainly this is how I and a lot of people have been using tools like this for years. But the other thing is to access the delay. It's under your profile in the top right menu here under Profile. There's just this option, delay automation by 30 minutes. Check that it's turned on. And actually, while you're in here, make sure that you're aware of this. The archive email address. This will speak to one of the questions that I know comes up in terms of how to get email into Mago, because Mago is not really intended to replace your email program. It's intended to kind of supplement, if that makes sense. So at any point, really, you can everybody has their own unique address here, and if you forward an email or BCC, if you're on the road and you just want to send a quick email out, if you BCC this address, it will match gigs and contacts by the email address that is being sent to or from, and archive that, put that email in the history. So that's one of the tools there. But make sure that that you've got your SMS number populated. Another big thing that happened recently, we've got some customers, some Mago users out in Australia, and one of the challenges was this old means of sending out a SMS through every carrier. Almost every carrier around the world has a gateway where you can send an email and it forwards it on as an SMS message. Because the way that SMS messages are billed in Australia, it is the sender that pays for them, not the recipient. And yeah, I say pays for them, but really we all have. Most people at this point have unlimited SMS messages. I mean, we're far away from plans that had 400 minutes and 100 messages back in the 90s and the early 2000s. But we've changed the way that SMS messages are sent, and so now they're sent as proper actual SMS messages. And so this piece is actually largely redundant now, but get your number in there. And also, as you're making some changes in here, going into billing, not billing, I apologize, going into your business, and just make sure that your business PayPal address is set, your currency and your units are set. Your currency, if you're in a country that uses dollars, there are lots of countries that use dollars currency, but they're not U.S. dollars. Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, I think New Zealand dollars, Jamaican dollars. This might look fine for you, but you want to make sure you get paid in the actual currency that you want. I guess it depends. It depends on. I mean, if you're charging, I don't know, 15,000 Jamaican dollars, and somebody pays you 15,000 American dollars, you probably won't mind. But you have the option here to select different currencies, and so make sure that's checked. Make sure if you want your distances in kilometers instead of miles, change this from imperial to metric. I apologize to all the international community for the Amerocentric ways of this and virtually everything else in the world, but that's all available there. Let me jump back to the questions, because I know we're going a little bit long today. But cue sheet, yes. So part of my process, and there are two things that really are worth noting. When a show date passes, for about 24 or so hours, the show will still be on your upcoming gigs. There are a lot of reasons for that. Sometimes people travel and they have gigs in different time zones that you don't want to disappear on the stroke of midnight. Sometimes I do a lot of after prom and after prom parties, project graduation, where it kind of goes into the morning. It's an overnight type thing, and I want these things to kind of be around for a little while. Other times, it's just kind of good to have that there for quick reference. If the next morning after the gig you want to go and just record a payment or something like that. But after the gig disappears up here, you still get one more notification where it says, it would be right on top. It'd be the most current, and it would say, this date has been marked, or this particular event XYZ has been marked completed. Take the opportunity to record any notes, anything like that. Whenever I do a show, in fact, we'll just pick one. We'll pick one in the past, is what I should do. Under the history, one of the things that I'll do right away is just put in, my show notes, because certainly I want to keep whatever my set list was. I want to, I want to have that in there. A lot of times I'll plan my set list before the show. So I'll just have this kind of available for me. But in addition to just keeping the notes, right, and just keeping track of what tricks I did, which is really important, because one of my two holiday parties this year is a private party. This is the third year in a row that they brought me in. And so I've got to make sure it's all the same people. I've got to make sure that I'm keeping it fresh. And so, I have all my notes from last year. I have all my notes from the year before. I know what they might want to see again. I know what they don't want to see again. But whenever I'm making notes, certainly I'll put in my my set list. I did what would I have performed? Bang night. Mona Lisa. I don't know. Card calling. Bill in orange. Whatever, right? Book test. Sculpture prediction, something like that. I have all this in here, but I don't just want my set list. What I really want is my actual notes from the show, the interaction, these human interactions that the people involved in those interactions will remember for the rest of their life. You know, I first experienced this. I was, back in 1998, I was the resident magician at TGI Fridays, right? Because, dreams really do come true. And I did that for 4 or 5 years. And then finally I got to a point where I'd kind of moved on, and I was doing a corporate event somewhere. And this guy had seen me 5 years ago. And he's like, "You were the guy at TGI Fridays." Yeah. And he opens his wallet and he pulls out this ratty old folded up card that has a signature on it. And he's like, "I've still got that card." And that really struck me. That was a really kind of meaningful moment. I started to see a pattern there. I'd be doing an event somewhere, and I would meet somebody who was describing an interaction they had with a magician 20 years ago. And we have entertainer stories coming out of our ears. We have millions of them. They have one. Most people have one. And this one little funny thing that happened is going to stay with them for the rest of their life. And you really start tapping the power of a CRM when you make a note of these things. So if you talk to this person in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and you say, "Hey, remember that thing?" They say, "Oh yeah," you've instantly brought back all that joy, all that fun, all the positive memories of that experience. So there's a huge amount of potential in there. And I do this in my thank you emails, or when I check in, I'll send an email out 6 months after the show that says, "Hey, I was just sitting here thinking about that one thing that happened, that when XYZ, when I snapped my fingers and the lights went out, and when the power cut out, or when you put that force card in your father's pocket," or something like that. These are things that it really makes people feel important, and from a sales aspect, you really want to make your customers feel important. People respond to that. They react to that. So certainly, I use the notes feature here to add my set list, but I actually write notes about the show as well. And if you're, keeping a set list is important when you come back. It's going to help you not repeat material. That helps. I've got plenty of people that bring me back, and they say, "Okay, we want different stuff this time. We love the, we love the lemon trick, we love the rope trick, whatever. But let's see something different." As part of the justification, somebody in a committee at a corporate event had to stand up and fight for you to be there, and they said, "Well, we already did that. Shouldn't we do something different this year?" No. I'm sure the performer has a lot of different stuff, because that's how we as variety entertainers end up getting booked. "Well, let's do something different this year. Let's do something different this year." And then they run out of DJ and band and casino and a lot of the standard things. And then they start booking game shows, or they book a hypnotist, or they book, a juggling act, or they book, something like this, or a roving silhouette artist. And this is how they find these gems, and then we want them to kind of keep coming back. Look, that was a huge hit. Let's do it again. So I put those notes in there, and when somebody calls me and I pull up that record, then I can instantly look at the history. I can look at the gig and see all the history. But the really great thing, if I just put my set list here in the history box, there it all is. If I have just my set list, it's all there. But because this gig is related to a contact, I can actually look at the contact, and I see all the relevant history here as well. And because if this particular person contact isn't associated with the company, but if they were associated with the company, then I see this as well. So even if I was doing a show for a different person for the same company, I can look at the company and see all the history, all the interactions, all my notes, everything, and that's all available. And you can always go in and add additional notes, but at a minimum, you should be keeping a set list if you do any repeat work. But beyond that, you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not just making a note, spending 30 seconds, 2 minutes tops, just making a note of those moments that are going to stick with people who are there forever. I recommend when you're creating these, now obviously I'm looking at a contact right now. I know I'm looking at contact because it says contacts and it has all contact information, not the gig information. I can go to the contact history and add a note, absolutely. But the problem is you want to always do these things from the, you want to do all these things from the right context. So if this relates to a gig, go into the gig and add the history there, because you want that history visible to the gig, because all these things bubble up, but they don't bubble down. You know, if I have a conversation related to a gig, I want that gig history. If I have a conversation with the same person unrelated to that gig that happened 2 years ago, then I don't want to see that in that history. This way, you've got different views of all the information. But as a result, you have focused information where you need it, and you have the 360-degree perspective where you want that as well, where you have visibility into everything as well. So let me jump back into here. Okay, we had the question, having email replies automatically load into Mago instead of the current mail account. We did talk about that. I'll mention it again just for the purposes of the just for the purposes of this kind of QA format, but I'll do this briefly. It's answered in more depth in one of the previous questions, but essentially, in your profile, the top right menu under profile, you have up here, click on profile, you have an archive, Mago archive email address. That email address, if you forward an email to that, it will find the email in the body of the message, in the forwarded message, and use that to link it to a contact or link it to a gig. If you email to somebody, if you're just firing a quick email off on your phone, you can BCC this address, and it will link that email that you just sent to a record in your database. And both of these we'll put those directly into there. Now, obviously, order matters because it's looking for specific records that have that email address. If there's nothing in your database that has that email address yet, it's not going to have anywhere to put it, so it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to say, oh, I can't find anywhere to put this, so I'm just going to throw it away. It's not trying to read your emails and infer a lot of things from it. It's not trying to look at the email and say, oh, well, there's a date there and there's a time here, and that looks like an address. Let me create a gig record. We're still a good long ways off of generalized artificial intelligence, and when it happens, I can pretty confidently say it won't be here. It's going to be some company like Google that has billions of email addresses to train AIs on instead of our many thousands. But also for various reasons, I don't want to be. I don't want machines trying to read your emails anyway. I don't. So we've got a couple more questions here. Yellow highlights in the messages after we enter our own information. So the yellow highlights, for those who don't follow the question, in some of the example templates, and let me go find one here. Here's one. This is an example email template. There's a yellow highlight. This is a formatting option. So if yeah, here it is a formatting option. So if I select some text, because some people do this just in the way they write their sales letter, they might say, I want to highlight this text like that. So we're not gonna remove any formatting from your email, but the reasons these are highlighted is because it's a balance to get you from a place where you can use some of these templates, and you just might want to tweak them here and there. And here, obviously, I couldn't give you one of my testimonials, so this is an option to put something in there. So the highlighting, whatever formatting you see in the preview, that's what it's going to look like when it sends. So you want to edit this if you if you have a testimonial, put that in there. If it's still highlighted, the highlight option is right here under background color. Just pick the X and that will unhighlight, or the whatever the right color is. Actually, I'm not sure what I've done here, but you can unhighlight these things, or otherwise just delete it and put it back in again. But yeah, so you do want to definitely remove that if you have that there. Let's see, where are we? So we've got a question about payment options in the future instead of just PayPal. Yes, in fact. So one of the other nice things that has happened over the last couple of weeks is we had a good response to the launch, and as a result, Mago has passed the break-even point, and although I'm not taking any vacations yet, I have invested some money in hiring a couple employees. So one of the things that is coming reasonably soon is additional payment options. It's a fairly easy process. Jeff, do you have any payment processor that you're already using elsewhere? Some people are using Braintree, some people are using Stripe. I use Authorize.net, Payments Pro, things like that. If you've got one, we've always had plans to put this in. I think we've got 150 or 200 different payment gateways that are payment gateways that will be available internationally. The problem was it was kind of one of these near horizon types of deals, because there's always something slightly more important to do. Now that we've got additional staff, this is actually a perfect job for one of the additional folks. They can start to build that integration relatively quickly, and really the way these things like this get prioritized is questions like that. So so certainly if you have another payment processor, we can set that up relatively quickly. If you don't, you might have to go set one up, and there's tons of options. A lot of people are very happy with Stripe. A lot of people are very happy with Square. I think Square has an API now. Those are a few very small business friendly merchants. So I would encourage checking those out. I don't really want to get into a situation where we're processing payments on your behalf. I know gigmasters.com does that, but gigmasters.com also primarily does business in North America and the United States. And so wiring money internationally becomes quite expensive. And I don't want there to be any bottleneck between you and getting your money. So the answer to the question, yes, we're going to add more payment gateway integrations based on demand, based on but it would require you to have an account with one of these organizations. And again, there's lots of them. I can send you a big list of these offline if you want to look at them. Actually, I'm using Authorize.net and TSYS. I know a lot of people are using, like I said, the big ones, Braintree, Stripe, Square, are some of the big ones that that a lot of small businesses use. But it is worth mentioning that a PayPal account is not necessary to pay, although there are some corporate cards. I've seen it happen maybe twice in several years, in the last 5 or 6 years. A corporate card that couldn't pay through PayPal, just based on some kind of block. And I think also, I'm not sure if PayPal accepts American Express. I have to check. I know they used to. I know they've been changing some of that. So I take American Express happily. A lot of people don't because the fees are higher. You know, those are all kind of your own business decisions. But let me know what gateway you're looking at, you'd like to set up, and we'll put that in place. Sonny, really excited that you're diving in and you're getting out of the Infusionsoft chaos. Would love to talk more about that. I actually haven't had a chance to read your email yet, but we will talk more. Very excited to have you on board. A forum. So, short answer on the forum: will there be a forum or something set up where Mago users can share each other's knowledge? Might save a lot of questions to you. Happy to put that on Facebook. The main thing, in fact, I'll send an announcement about this because there is kind of one that exists right now. The problem with it is it's not a good forum right now. Something like Facebook is not a good forum for something like a support request. Like if you ran into a bug, or if there was something that you needed kind of my specific help for, the very ephemeral nature of social media, it's a recipe for these things to kind of fall through the cracks. In fact, I'm going to send an email out about this realistically later this week, and because I've got to finalize some policies around this. But the big lesson learned: we've had a lot of people jump in and into Mago, and the lesson that I've learned in this whole process is that if I'm, I have 2 different Facebook pages, and then my personal Facebook account, and email and text and phone and support tickets, and there's a Facebook group. There's 9 different places that support requests to me can come in, and it's very difficult. Email is very easy for things to get buried. Facebook, it's even easier for things to get buried because of just the way that they sort what's on top of the page at any given instant. So happy to do that as long as there's a clear understanding. This is really kind of to interact with other Mago users, and it's not somewhere you'd say, "Hey, Michael, can you look at this?" Because I really want to make sure that you get the best kind of support experience. And if the support comes in through a channel where things might get lost, then it's not possible to consistently get that experience. Whereas if you create a support ticket, I mean, they're there and they don't go away until the problem is solved. So, but I think, I mean, I would dip in there from time to time, but I wouldn't expect that I see everything that comes in. Part of my process in general for my productivity is I turn off social media notifications. I get social media notifications in a digest at the end of the day. And if it's a really busy day on social media, I might have a list of 50 emails that came in that I never looked at. So, that's just my thought on that. But I think that's a few people have asked for that, and I think it's really important. So I think it's important to look at that. And last question we have here, the same contact for different companies. I know we talked a little bit about this, and it's I actually did design the data model to allow that. So contacts can be associated with multiple companies, but it's not a yeah, it's a but in the interest of keeping the overall the overall UI, the user experience simple and straightforward, there's just kind of a one-to-one relationship right now. You could duplicate them, and that would actually, that might be the best option right now, because if you have a event in a gig that jumps up, that works its way up the chain from the gig to the contact to the company. So because of the way those three are all kind of there's that they have that transitive link. If you don't want the Rotary Club gig notes in the company, under the company, then you want to break that link somewhere. So that's probably how I would handle it, to be honest. But I'd like to get more information on that. I mean, if that's something a lot of people are running into, then maybe the way that maybe there's a few minor changes we could make to make that work better. Because certainly, like I said, there is the data model supports that, you know, a person can be associated with many companies, but in the interest of keeping it simple, the UI doesn't allow you to do that. So it's I don't know. I'd like to have more conversations around that. But certainly, right now, the easiest workaround is to have a duplicate. Because I haven't had that come up in Mago at all during the beta, or kind of any, you know, other than I think from you, and it certainly never came up in Showbiz CRM. So it's possible, but it hasn't ever come up since 2010. So I don't know if people just always worked around it or what, but you know, that's the nice thing of having your own product and having control of all the source code, is you can make it do whatever you want. And last question, the field name key, Gary. Yes, thank you. I'm glad you said that. So in the knowledge base, there is a list of all the computed formatted fields. So we have balance due, balance amount, current date, distance, gig. You know, all these. So we have kind of a legend of these, but everything else just maps directly to. Thank you, Jerry. Take care. Everything else just directly maps to its field in Mago. So first name maps to first name in contact, last name and maps to last name in contact, and so on. So these are all in the knowledge base, which is accessible. If I jump over here, it's under tutorials, under help, and these articles are all under emails and automation. But that's there, and those are the ones that really need some explanation. And there's a lot of these are kind of interlinked as well. Where we're talking about email templates and things like that. We talk a little bit about the fields and how these all work. But the main article is these computed formatted merge fields that have all these little gems in here. A lot of things that people didn't know. Distance to gig. will inject the number of miles, driving miles, from your whatever you have set as your address in Mago and the venue address, as long as there's a valid venue address in there. I use this a lot. You see this in the new lead email that comes out. It says that, you know, when I'm looking at, I'm just glancing at the event, things I want to see are the calendar for that day. I want to see if am I busy at all yet. That's in the email. I want to see the details of the event. That's in the email. I want to see how far away it is. You know, I lived in Houston for a long time, and the Houston metro area is pretty big. I lived on the northern extremities of the Houston metro area. It extends probably another 40 miles past my house, 30 maybe. But I could easily have a local gig that is 100 miles away or more. You know, a local gig that's a 2-hour drive is not uncommon for me. So I want to see not just a distance as the crow flies, because that might be very different. If you know, because there's no straight line. If there's not a straight line drive, but I have to drive, let's say it's in Southwest Houston or West Houston, and I'm up in northeast, a straight line might say, oh, it's 35 miles away. That doesn't sound like very much, but when you drive it, it's 60 miles, right? That's important stuff to know. So having that distance to gig, the e-sign line and the e-sign link, these are very necessary if you're setting up electronic signatures. There's a video in the tutorials in the knowledge base that I would highly recommend you watch to avoid any confusion or any you know, when you send out your first contract. The gig weekday, this is another one I use quite a bit. You know, if I want to say, hey, I'll see you on Saturday, then I use gig weekday instead of the gig date. So if I use the date, it might come out as, you know, 12/10/16, but hey, I'll see you on 12/10/16 is a little bit odd. Whereas if you say see you on Saturday, that sounds a little more natural, and you can do things like that. A map link, that's a link to you click on it to bring up Google Maps for the venue address. Online payment link. There's a lot of options in here, so encourage you to check these out. But they're all in the thing, and anything you can't find in the tutorials and knowledge base section, you know, throw in a ticket, send me an email, and we'll keep growing that out. So let me jump back to the webinar. I've got that answered. It looks like we've got all the questions. This was a long but hopefully a productive webinar. Let me jump back to the camera. So it was long, but hopefully a productive session. For everybody who stuck around, I appreciate you coming, checking out, sticking around. I hope that kind of in-depth discussion of the routines, the automation was useful. If you need anything at all, don't forget the support tickets are right there in the side navigation. Just send something my way. Tickets are absolutely the best way to get help. I get notifications. I don't get notifications from Facebook right away, but I get notifications from tickets right away, and they can't get buried. There's no way for tickets to be out of sight, out of mind, whereas emails get buried. Facebook notifications get buried, but those tickets are always there. So thank you all for your time. Thanks for being part of the Mago family, and I hope everybody has a killer holiday season. I'm going to sign off, but take care and let me know how things go. See you later.